In contrast to the sleek and polished visuals of modern Hollywood movies, analog horror embraces the aesthetics of VHS tapes, cassette tapes, analog TV broadcasts, and other outdated or obsolete technologies to create a whole new brand of surreal, unsettling horror. I'm your host James, and these are the top 5 scary analog horror videos you need to pray before watching. And we're starting off at number 5 with Greylock. This is a web series that started on YouTube just about 8 months back at the time of recording this video, but it's gotten a fair amount of buzz online. The series is a collection of surreal and disturbing short videos made to look as if they were shot on VHS. You slowly watch as the story unfolds, piecing together the mystery as to what the hell these videos even are. For a lot of folks, analog horror was getting a little repetitive over the years, but this seems to have breathed new life into the genre. It's just a really well done series. Great voice acting, genuinely unsettling imagery. It's like watching a nightmare play out on screen, and it's got a lot of fans excited about the genre again. The series is still just getting started, really, so we haven't seen exactly where everything is going yet. It's still very mysterious, but that's a big part of what makes analog horror so scary. It's that fear of the unknown mixed with imagery that is sometimes oddly familiar. One of the most unsettling videos on the channel, and probably one that the series is most well known for, is entitled Tape 06 Sleeping Dogs. The majority of the video is presented as a series of voice messages made by a man named Paul, a construction worker who's come across a mysterious tunnel while on a job. He describes the tunnel as seeming to look man-made. As the messages continue though, Paul is audibly becoming more and more distressed. Strange and disturbing things are starting to happen to him and his crew. And what's great about how the story is told is that we don't see what Paul is talking about. We just hear his voice through these voice messages. It's a perfect example of how sometimes the best way to approach horror is by allowing the audience to picture the horror in their own imaginations. We do get a disturbing visual along with the audio though, a lo-fi graphic featuring an image of Paul with a date and time next to his face, all on a blue backdrop. It almost looks like something you'd see on the news, except heavily distorted. Another incredibly creepy touch is that as Paul's phone messages become more and more disturbing, his photo starts distorting, starting off with a smile at the start of the video and then morphing into a demented frown towards the end. And at number 4, we have Skinamarink. This is a good example, to me, of the analog horror genre seeping its way into full-length movies. It's not analog horror in the classical sense, but it has some staples of the genre. So the low-quality, grainy image, the fact that you don't have visible actors on screen, it's presented in an almost found footage POV style, even though that's not technically what it is. This movie is very hard to explain. It kind of just needs to be experienced. Now, fear is very subjective, and this movie is not going to be for everybody. Some people really hated it, others found it to be one of the most terrifying movies they'd ever seen. I could talk about Skinamarink to death, and I want to avoid overhyping it, but I'll just say this. I haven't been this scared watching a movie since I was a kid. The plot is very simple. 2 siblings wake up to find that their parents are gone, and every window and door in their house has vanished. But they may not be completely alone in the house. The film is presented almost entirely of still shots of dark hallways and rooms with just the sounds of the 2 siblings whispering to each other, trying to figure out what's going on. You know when you first turn off the lights in your room to go to bed and you're laying in pitch blackness, only you see this graininess in your vision. It looks almost like minuscule little shapes dancing in the black. Well, the low quality image in this movie combined with the dim lighting in almost every shot really mimics that perfectly, and it reminded me of that feeling you have as a kid lying awake well into the night, staring into the darkness of your room, watching that graininess dancing in your vision, convinced that there's something there with you lurking in the corner of your room. I found myself transfixed by this movie. I describe it as almost hypnotic. And yes, there are some long, boring stretches, but honestly, that's part of what makes this movie so effective. It lulls you into this almost dreamlike state so that when something unsettling happens, it hits even harder. Make sure to watch this movie in the right setting though. Me and some buddies watched it, just all the lights off, projected it onto his wall. Watching on your laptop in the middle of the afternoon, like distracted with other stuff going on, it's just not gonna have the same effect. Next on the list we have Thalasin. This video was published to YouTube by the channel Gooseworks. It's the first video in a very short 3-video series called The Blue Channel. The video is presented as an old infomercial for a medication called Thalasin. It uses late 80s to mid 90s kind of lo-fi graphics that you would have seen on cable TV back in the day. Again, very much playing into the familiar yet distorted and surreal vibe that's at the core of analog horror. In the video, Thalasin is described as a medication used to treat a made-up condition called AED, or Advanced Emotional Deterioration, with Thalasin increasing the potency of one's emotions. The graphics feel so true to the time they're kind of parodying that if you didn't know any better, you'd probably think this was a genuine pharmaceutical ad from like 1988. As the video goes on though, it descends into something nightmarish. The narrator starts listing off a series of emotions that the medication can help people with, accompanied by drawings of these emotions on a man's face. Starts off pretty standard, happiness, sadness, anger, relief, but then it changes on a dime. The narrator asks the audience, "Are you tired of only experiencing natural emotions?" The ad then becomes about Thalasin Plus, which allows for an extended palette of emotions, which the narrator starts listing off. Still accompanied by the drawings of the man's face, only now it takes on a horrifically distorted form. The video, only now it starts taking on horrifically distorted forms. The video borders on humor too, because the made up names of these emotions like humber and degrance and dorselessness are just funny, and then with all these insane images of the dude's face, it's disturbing and uncomfortable, but comedically well timed and just so surreal, makes me laugh out loud as well. In at number 2, we have the Mandela Catalouge. This is an analog horror web series created by YouTuber Alex Kister. It's become one of the staples of the genre. The series is set in Mandela County, Wisconsin. The series is set in Mandela County, Wisconsin during the early 90s and late 2000s. The storyline revolves around these shape-shifting creatures called alternates, led by a figure resembling the Archangel Gabriel. These nearly immortal beings aim to wipe out humanity, taking the identity of citizens by psychologically tormenting them into a state where they end up taking their own lives, referred to in the series as metaphysical awareness disorder, or MAD. The alternates use televisions, computers, vehicle GPS systems to manipulate and control people, which is what we're basically watching. The series incorporates biblical references too, suggesting that the alternates are in fact biblical demons, and that Gabriel is a deceptive representation of Satan. The plot subtly explores biblical stories like Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, and the birth of Jesus, of course presented in a disjointed, surreal kind of way. But the combination of these ancient themes with modern technology, or modern for 90s and 2000s anyway, it's different. It's a blend of the supernatural and the contemporary. The characters in the series grapple with the implications of the alternates' existence and their destructive intentions. The psychological toll on the residents of Mandela County is a central theme. They're not just facing the external threats, but also they're battling internal struggles because of the relentless torment inflicted by the entities. Finally though, I couldn't make an analog horror video without talking about the Backrooms. The Backrooms has kind of become its own offshoot of the analog horror genre, almost forming a genre in itself, and I think it's kind of been butchered now with people adding all this lore behind it and just expanding too much on it. It just kind of kills the mystery, making it less scary. But initially, this concept was really cool, and the videos by Kane Pixels were fantastic. There have been some other solid ones since his work, but also a lot of unoriginal duds. The Backrooms internet phenomenon all started out with one single image posted to 4chan. The image was accompanied with the caption, "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you." So this really sparked a lot of people's imaginations. That piece of text just added this layer of dread and mystery to what looked to be simply a boring, empty office space. Looking at the image further though, there really is something unnerving about it. It's familiar but drab and ominous. The Backrooms really took off when the Backrooms found footage was uploaded to YouTube by Kane Parsons, aka Kane Pixels. This added a found footage analog horror element to the fear of liminal spaces. that the Backrooms also heavily represents. It's a fantastic video and really looks like a large empty office space shot in the real world, but it's completely digital. We watch as a young guy filming with a VHS camera is suddenly transported to the Backrooms, where he walks through the seemingly endless maze of empty rooms before being pursued by a terrifying entity. Kane Parsons has described the Backrooms as a poorly remembered recollection of the late 90s and early 2000s. And that is definitely a major aspect of not just the Backrooms, but the analog horror genre as a whole. It's images of low-quality television commercials tucked away in the back of our childhood brains, but distorted into something nightmarish. And I just think that that's really fascinating. But with all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.